Hi, Grace Lynch, video 3 of this little clip about memory. So, the beauty of the inventory that I found when applying it to context addiction, rather than traditional 12-step recovery, was that I was using the inventory not to get right with the world, but I was using it to get right with myself. And so I had the notion that if a memory is intrusive, that it's causing this time jumping thing, it's not functioning properly the way memory is supposed to function. And then I do detective work. I look at my sense of what the memory is to me now, and I write that down if I need to. And then I ask myself if the problem I have is in the memory is resolved. If it isn't, I tell myself, okay, well, whatever story I'm telling myself about what's bothering me about this memory can't be true. Because if it was, I would notice and I would respect what I think is bothering me, and it wouldn't bother me anymore. So my narrative is wrong. What's really going on? Oh, well, and then I'll look for symptoms of it. How do I talk about the memory? Do I talk about the memory as if I'm panning a video camera? As if, do I only have a relationship with the memory in terms that I could relate to somebody else? Because one of the key parts of any memory of my life, especially the trauma, is that although there may be aspects that others can relate to, I'm the only one who had to go through it as me. And no one can relate to that, ever. I was the only one there as me. In any experience I've ever had, I'm the only one who was transformed inside the experience and who had to survive being changed into something new and then have my brain re-understand who I am inside the experience, reestablish my connection with self, reestablish my sense of my personal safety and my personal way of life when I had been irrevocably changed by the chaos of experience. I'm the only one who has that. I'm the only one who will ever have that. And as a new experience, since traditional language is based on shared experience, it is impossible that there could already be words for my individual experience because nobody else has been there to have the experience to find the words. One of the chief barriers that I've had and that I've found other people have with fully resolving trauma is that they expect to be able to come up with a narrative for the experience that talks about it in terms that are completely relatable. The problem is that there's a part of the experience that's unique and only that person's. And so the difficulty can be, what I found, is that I could not accept my experience unless I had some kind of relatability for it. But the reality of the experience defied that. And so I felt like I had to make a choice between the authenticity of my experience and the integrity of my expression. The problem is that my trauma doesn't care about how integral my expression is. My experience is something that happened in my whole body. It is a fact. How I talk about it, how I relate it, how I understand it, how I share it, how I relate to the rest of the world in light of it is an ongoing process that's narrativistic. But the story mind is the adaptation. The experience is set in stone. It's no longer happening anymore, for heaven's sake. Those experiences happen, and that's the cellular body changing in a way that can't be gotten back to. The world has moved on. My body has moved on. I'm in a different world. So once I made once I added the connection, the understanding that the barrier had been trying to keep my understanding of my experience inside a shared language system. The benefit of having endured aphasia had been decades of experience of life without relatability, without a social connection. And so I found my awareness continued even though my relatability did not. If that was so and I could build language, clearly language was not something that was only had to do with human relationship. It could happen in an individual way. So once I let my understanding of language be larger, then I had less of the conflict of exploring the authenticity of my experience, but trying to bind it into what I can relate to somebody else. And I began to lose my fear of embracing the direct experience and feeling all of it, because I didn't carry the burden along with me. Like, if I feel this thing, I've got to be ready to talk about it with somebody else, or I'm crazy, or it's crazy, or something's wrong, or all that stuff. No, nothing's wrong. I have the experience, and sometimes I can't relate it to anybody, and it still happened, and it's fine. So the benefit, in a weird way, of having had aphasia was sort of breaking the addiction of contextual thinking. It's not that contextual thinking isn't helpful when it works, but when it fails to, and it does, it can't possibly meet the demands of detailing an experience that nobody else has ever had before. Because, like, going to a planet where there's new organisms and things there, it's a ridiculous assumption that you're going to find the proper term for organisms nobody's been there to name before. In the same sense, in terms of personal trauma and experience, nobody's ever been to Planet U before to identify the details of your experience. So the demand on myself that I'm going to get to know my authentic experience and feel it, and also carry the burden of making it relatable, was something that I was able to drop. And the more that I was able to drop that and be with the experience, I started to find my words for it. And once I didn't have to convert everything immediately into relatability, then when I had something that was unsafe and I felt scared, then I could understand the feeling in light of the experience. I'm scared. That's a perfectly normal, healthy feeling. Wonderful. I was inside these traumas, condemning myself for not having adapted well. When I could safely go back without having to reflexively make it a story out of it, I'd go back and, like, oh, this thing was happening, and this is how it made me feel in my body, which is how it made me feel emotionally. And this is what it caused me to think, and this is what it caused me to believe. And I can look at that, and I can be with the experience, and I can say, oh, wow. So that's cool. That's how I responded in that moment. I get to know myself and how reality actually impacts me. And because I'm doing it from a place of safety inside the inventory, then I can begin to value my direct responses of reality. I can begin to learn about what actually scares me and why in my body, not in some story. I don't have to care about psychological theory things. I can go directly to the experience. This is what happens. This hits me. This is what happens. And then I can learn and develop my individual values, so that later on in life, as I get to know myself in this way, then I can develop a body of experiences that give me my personal values. I can begin to make responsible choices in my relationships, my life experiences, my boundaries. If something affects me in a certain way, I could say that's not right for me. And if somebody questions that, I could say, I don't have to answer your questions, because it's not my responsibility to take care of you about the meaning of my experiences. They're my experiences, and I'm another person on the planet. And if you have issues with that, then I suggest that you get all the emotional support that you need, but it's not my job. See, then I begin to have a voice for the direct impact of life on me, and start dismantling those codependent things that I was using to maintain the story of what happened to me. Because the story works until I have an experience of myself that grappling with is too hard to both grapple with and make it relatable. And what I found in neurodiverse recovery is very often a person, the more sober they get, and I found this myself, the more in touch with my direct experiences I have that nobody else has had. I'd never met anybody else who could hear color and touch sound, and words had shape that fit together in only one way, and they live inside music and things like that. Because of that, I had a special experience of life that was every bit as real and valid as anything else, but it would be impossible for me to get to know it and value it and come to know my own understanding of it if I also added the demand of doing so and making a story out of it that I knew somebody else could relate to in order to validate it. As I dropped that, I started to find a way to make peace with my experience, and over time, it became a working way of life. So I'll try to find titles for these. That's like a 3-shot thing, but I thought I'd get it all out there. Till next time, I hope these are helpful. Somebody please do a like thing. I feel like it's weird. Anyway, have a good night.